Hey everyone, welcome. Today we are diving headfirst into one of the most audacious, just infamous conspiracies in all of history. I'm talking about the Gunpowder Plot. It's an incredible story of faith, of rebellion, and an explosion that, honestly, almost changed the entire world.
I mean, it's a pretty radical question, right? But for this small group of guys in 17th century England, this wasn't just some hypothetical thought experiment. No, it was a plan. They truly believed they had the answer. And let's just say, it was explosive.
So, picture this. We're in London, November 5th, 1605, the very heart of the English kingdom. Parliament is just about to open its session, and inside you've got the king, his entire family, and basically the whole Protestant ruling class all gathered together in one room. I mean, talk about the perfect target.
36. Just let that number sink in. That's how many barrels of gunpowder they found, just stacked up in a cellar right underneath the House of Lords. And get this. Modern analysis shows that was more than double what they actually needed. They weren't just trying to kill everyone inside. They were going to reduce the entire building and a good chunk of Westminster to absolute rubble.
So we're talking the dead of night, literally hours before this thing is supposed to go off. A search party storms the cellars, and who do they find? A man named Guy Fawkes. He's all dressed up in his boots and spurs, totally ready to light the fuse and make a run for it. The whole plot was stopped at the absolute final second.
Now, under interrogation, Guy Fawkes was something else. He was completely defiant. He didn't just confess, he openly admitted his goal was to blow the whole place sky high. And his refusal to break, even when they were threatening him with torture, well, it actually earned him a moment of grudging respect from the very king he was trying to kill. King James himself remarked on his Roman resolution.
But here's the thing. Why would anyone even try something so extreme? This wasn't just mindless destruction. To really understand the Gunpowder Plot, you've got to go deeper. You have to look at the decades of pure desperation that fueled an act this radical.
You know, the fuse for this whole thing wasn't really lit in 1605. It was laid, piece by piece, over the entire last century. We're talking about a kingdom completely torn apart by religious conflict. It really all kicks off when King Henry VIII decides to break from Rome and create his own church. Then, under his daughter, Queen Elizabeth I, being a Catholic became seriously dangerous. Priests had to practice in secret, everyday people were getting fined, thrown in prison, or even executed for their faith. And then, the execution of Mary Queen of Scots, a huge Catholic figure, that just made everything worse. So you can imagine when her son, James, finally took the throne, a lot of Catholics were thinking, okay, finally, maybe things will change.
Yeah, that hope didn't last long. This was pretty much the moment it died. James, the son of a Catholic martyr, you'd think he'd be sympathetic, right? Nope, he completely crushed any of that optimism. He came out and publicly condemned Catholicism, brought back all these harsh fines for anyone who wouldn't attend Protestant services. For a small, really devout, and frankly desperate group of people, this betrayal was the absolute final straw.
So with all the peaceful options seemingly off the table, a group of English Catholics from outside the big city circles decided that the only path left was violence. And not just any violence. We're talking about something unprecedented and, well, spectacular.
All right, so let's meet the key players. Now everyone knows Guy Fawkes. He's the face of the plot, right? But the real mastermind, the leader, was a guy named Robert Catesby. This man was charismatic, incredibly persuasive, and deeply, intensely devout. He had the kind of conviction you need to bring a group of men together for a mission that every single one of them knew was high treason.
And this quote here, this was basically Catesby's sales pitch. It's how he convinced guys like Thomas Wintour, who were, a little hesitant about the whole thing. He framed it as this single, decisive act, almost like a divine strike. If it fails, it fails, but they had to try. And, well, his speech worked. And just look at the sheer ambition of this plan. This wasn't just about killing the king. This was a full-blown coup d'etat. Step 3, lighting the fuse, that's the part everyone remembers. But look at step 4. That shows you the true scale of this thing. Their plan was to completely decapitate the government and then kick off a massive uprising in the Midlands, all to install their own puppet Catholic queen on the throne. Okay, so the plan is set. The gunpowder is waiting, the date is getting closer and closer. But then, just 10 days before it's all supposed to go down, a single pang of conscience threatens to unravel the entire conspiracy.
What happened was this. A guy named Lord Monteagle, who was a Catholic member of Parliament, gets this anonymous letter delivered to his house.
Clearly, someone involved in the plot didn't want him to get caught in the blast. Monteagle reads this, has no idea what to make of it, and does what any sensible nobleman would do. He takes it straight to the authorities.
And this quote from the letter, this is the phrase that set off all the alarm bells. When the letter gets shown to King James, he immediately zeroes in on those words, a terrible blow. Right away, he connects that to gunpowder. And you have to remember, he knew firsthand what that meant. His own father had been killed in an explosion. That one cryptic warning, it basically gave the whole game away.
Now, what's incredible is that the plotters actually found out about the letter. They knew they were probably compromised. They even suspected one of their own guys had sent it. But Catesby, being Catesby, ever the charismatic leader, he rallies them one last time. He convinces them to see it through to the very end. And that decision, well, it sealed their fate. And that brings us full circle, right back to the night of November 4th, to that search party in the cellar, and the violent chain of events that kicked off right after.
The second the news of Fox's arrest gets out, the other plotters flee London. That big uprising they planned for the Midlands, it never even started. They were just hunted men. They were finally cornered at a place called Holbitch House, where, and you can't make this up, in a moment of pure, dark irony, a stray spark accidentally lit some of their spare gunpowder they were trying to dry, and it injured a bunch of them. Catesby, the mastermind, was killed in the final shootout. The rest were captured and dragged back to London to face justice.
And justice for high treason back then was, well, it was unimaginably brutal. The punishment, hanged, drawn, and quartered, was designed to be the ultimate deterrent. It was a slow, agonizing, very public spectacle of a person's destruction. And that was the fate waiting for the survivors. But even at the very end, after being weakened by torture, Guy Fawkes managed one last act of defiance. As they were about to hang him, he jumped from the gallows ladder with the noose around his neck. He broke his own neck, dying instantly, and cheated the executioner of that horrific ritual that was supposed to come next. The plot's failure was immediately seared into England's national memory. I mean, this nursery rhyme started making the rounds almost instantly. And Parliament even passed an act that made the 5th of November an annual day of Thanksgiving for saving the king. They were making sure nobody would ever forget. And the legacy of this failed plot is just so enduring and kind of surprising, right? The bonfires that people lit to celebrate the king's survival, those evolved into the Bonfire Night that's still celebrated today. And the effigies of Guy Fawkes that they would burn, they became known as guys. And over centuries, that's where we get the word we use every day for any man, Guy. So that's where we'll leave it. The Gunpowder Plot is this incredible story of religious persecution, radicalization, and in the end, total failure. And yet somehow, its memory has transformed. It went from a day of solemn, mandatory Thanksgiving to a night of fireworks and fun. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it, about how history gets remembered and how the villains of one era can become the symbols of a completely different one.